Hey everybody, I'm Gary Garrick. I've done a few videos on Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead and, my thoughts and opinions of the movie in and of itself. And I'm trying to get the light right so it's not reflecting off my glasses. By the way, you want to get a good light for lighting yourself, man. This is a dollar store. I bought it because we were having a power outage not that long ago. Due to a storm that came through, and I was like, oh wow, this thing works great for doing videos, conference calls, things of that nature. So I'm like, it's better than the light that's giving off yellow, because it's very hard to find LEDs that have that cool white look. So anyways, getting back to the subject. So I watch a lot of videos pertaining to Army of the Dead because it's kind of a weird movie for me, if you know what I mean. It's how can I put this? It's on first viewing, it was something that I was kind of on the fence about. I was like, but I didn't hate it. It was a movie that I said, well, I'll revisit it when it gets on Netflix, because I saw it in theaters a week earlier, and I said, well, I'll just revisit it and see how it goes. And I ended up rewatching it on launch day. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to see things about this that I like. More things connected with me on a second viewing. And so I let a couple days go by after and I said, let me watch it again. And the more I watched it, the more I found respect for it. But one of the things I find kind of ironic are the amount of people that actually make videos and commentaries about Army of the Dead, like Cinema Sins and Let Me Explain and Looper, which are a lot of channels I subscribe to here on YouTube, and I find some of their anecdotes, trivia, whatever you want to refer to it as, is interesting. It's just another aspect to the side of filmmaking that I happen to enjoy as someone who has been a filmmaker myself. I don't really do much anymore. Back in the mid 2000s, I did a couple zombie films, and in 2011, I did a urban kind of gangster film based on the Baltimore drug trade. Very low budget stuff. But the only thing I keep getting asked for is, when you're going to do your third zombie film. I gave up after 13 years of development hell. I mean, the script's floating out there on the web, and it was turned into a novel by an acquaintance named Blaine Hishop, or Bishop, or something like that. I can't remember. This is years ago. And I'm sorry, Blaine, if you happen to come across this video. I think it's Hishop, or Hishop, or something like that. I should probably just go on Amazon and look it the fuck up, but I'm lazy. I procrastinate a lot. So, oh yeah, it's my 5.0 tattoo from my Mustang days. I used to be a big Mustang fan. So, anyways, getting back to it. So, a lot of these things are, especially the videos where like, oh, did you see the UFOs, or did you see this? And one of the things is, Zack Snyder is an Easter egg kind of guy, which is what I like about him as a filmmaker. These little things that if you are into movies, you're going to recognize them. So, like with the original Dawn of the Dead, right? There's little things that they did in the trailers and in the feature film that true Dawn of the Dead fans were going to know and were going to love, right? So, like when Anna is driving through the neighborhood, and it's in complete chaos, and the camera's mounted on the back, there's a radio announcer goes, the people they kill get up and kill. And that was an iconic line from the opening of the original Dawn of the Dead, when these two guys are arguing back and forth about the dead coming back to life, and the entire world is in chaos at this point. Or, the helicopter flying through the shot when the mysterious Shrek van comes out of nowhere. If you've ever listened to the Dawn of the Dead commentary, they call it the Shrek copter or the Shrek van, because the CG company missed having it start earlier in the frame or something, and it just appears out of nowhere and crashes into the car and into the gas station and blows up. So, anyways, Zack Snyder is great at hiding those little things. Like, I've been on the set of the Dawn of the Dead remake, and while you couldn't see it due to the neon lights they used, there was a place in the background called, and it just, you could make out Diner, but it actually said Wooly's Diner, and Wooly was a character from the original Dawn of the Dead, and obviously the Galen Ross store was named after the actress who played Fran in Dawn of the Dead. But anyways, getting back on track with Army of the Dead. So, as I said, originally didn't like it, but I caught all these references in the first viewing of the film, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I said, Zeus, who I knew his name was going to be Zeus from reading comments and tidbits here and there. Actually, Army of the Dead was a script, one of the few scripts I didn't search out to read prior to seeing the movie. I knew the development hell this movie went through, so, and I met Zack years ago when he made the Dawn of the Dead remake, so it was his first feature film. This dude's so laid back. He's like the coolest cat I have ever met. And so I had a respect for Zack Snyder starting with the Dawn of the Dead remake. And I wasn't even an original fan of that. I was invited to the world premiere because of the coverage I had with a website at the time called wetandwildradio.com, which later became my film company. But anyways, I wasn't impressed the first time I saw it, which was at a private screening the night before the world premiere. And, I mean, it wasn't private for just me, but there was other people there that were part of the production. And I was just kind of like, eh. And I remember seeing Zack the next morning at the press conference at the Beverly Hills Mall where they held the premiere. And Zack came over and he said, what did you think? And I said, well, I can tell you with the true zombie fans, you're going to have an issue with the running zombies. I said, I don't have a problem with them because I'm a big fan of the Return of the Living Dead, but even they didn't run at the speed that Dawn of the Dead zombies did. But they were runners. And I said, but, I have a problem, man. There's this huge plot hole. I said, where Anna said, no, they're not going to come back because they weren't bitten. And my first words to him were, well, where does your first zombie start? I said, you got to have somebody who became a zombie some way or another. And, and you're saying they're only transferred through bites, but the mythology is however people die, that's part of the original Dawn of the Dead. You die. And I said, you haven't come up with a single explanation other than it seems to be more of a virus. And which made a lot more sense with Army of the Dead, because I find it ironic that it kind of follows the same theory. So today, now I completely understand where he was going with the Dawn of the Dead remake. He made a little comment about it. He said, well, I kind of like to think of it as some experiment or some, research thing that was going on. And I didn't really pay much attention to it, but then I knew he was working on trying to get Army of the Dead done. And I was following that as much as I could on what news was available. Because once I covered the Dawn of the Dead remake, I appeared in Land of the Dead, and I didn't really follow up on much. And then his next movie came out, 300, which I went to see, and I loved. Well, I can't say I loved it. I liked it. Let's put it that way. And I didn't watch Sucker Punch or the Owl movie, Watchmen. I really enjoyed the hell out of that. And then, obviously, Man of Steel. I became a huge fan of Man of Steel. I think it's the best in the DC Snyderverse. But getting back to the point, which I know I keep going off tandem here, is that all of these people that point out all these little things, like all the UFOs or, the three corpses that looked like, the guys that were doing it again, and Vanderohe talking about the time loop and that they just keep repeating themselves. And I could buy into that for some reason, because I kind of believe in the whole reincarnation thing. That's why I kind of think graveyards are a waste of time, because you're just using up valuable real estate to bury somebody in the ground that you're not going to visit very often. I mean, you might for the first couple of years, but like my father, or I should say, my stepfather passed away back in the 70s. So, I was young. I was 4 or 5. And up until the 80s, my mom or I would drive down from Connecticut because he was buried in Pennsylvania where I currently live. And we just, we put flowers on the grave, spend about 30 minutes and just go. I haven't been back to his gravesite in 20, 25 years. And I just was like, well, I didn't know him very well. And it's, he's not my biological father. I mean, out of respect, I should do it, but you get the point. But there's these little things, that didn't really come back to me about Army of the Dead, or even the Dawn of the Dead remake until Army of the Dead came out. But it was these little Easter eggs that people weren't catching on to. And, Army of the Dead had the reference. There was a hidden reference, and it's a blink if you miss it moment, when Tig Notaro's scrolling through her phone that says, new information revealed about zombie outbreak in Milwaukee. And if you know about his 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead, it takes place in Milwaukee, which wouldn't take much because I've been to Milwaukee. I have friends in Milwaukee, and kind of looks like a zombie wasteland right now. Sorry, Billy, if you're watching. Anyways, but which brings up another thing to me real quick. My friend Billy Olson, who lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, if you ever get a chance to see his show, Night of the Living Dead with Puppets, it's awesome. And I'm not plugging it just because he's a friend. I'm plugging it because I didn't know him at the time I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, this is freaking hilarious. It's hilarious and great at the same time. You're honoring the classic, but you're doing it with puppets. And I was like, all right, I'll run with it. So, anyways, and then the other thing that nobody seems to catch on to is Zeus being a direct link to Leonidas in 300. I never understood that. I'm reading the comments on YouTube and other articles, and they're talking about this Easter egg and that Easter egg, and I'm like, how has nobody caught that Zeus is like Leonidas from 300? He's got the fucking mask, he's got the goddamn cape. I mean, that was so obvious slap in the face. I mean, the only thing they could have had Zeus do if he talked was say, this is Sparta, and I don't think people still would have got it. I mean, that was an in-your-face Easter egg, and nobody mentions it in any YouTube video that I have seen or comment section that I have read. And I was just kind of like, wow, that seems really strange. Those of you that do follow me, I think I have like 3,000 subscribers, most of it because of the movies I made. If you're wondering, God, this guy's video sucks, it's just him talking, you're right, and that's all it's ever going to be. I'm not going to sit here, even though I can edit and I'm not going to spend hours on end like some of these guys do, and they have production crews because they're monetizing their videos and they're making great money. So you're never going to see something like you would see from Looper or some of these other guys, because when I kind of left the filmmaking side of things, I was like, I'm leaving all aspects of it. I don't even really edit anymore. Although I went back to remixing music because I used to be a DJ. So, but my big, thing though is Army of the Dead is, coming back to the subject. I know I'm like, he's like, man, this guy's all over the place. It's like he's got ADD. So, these little Easter eggs, there's things you gotta pay attention to. Now, there's people that just didn't like it after the first viewing. They're completely turned off from it. They're never going to watch it again. Those of you that were on the fence, I would say give it another shot. I've probably seen it about 5 times now. And honestly, I watch it on... I have my laptop, which I'm not recording with. I'm actually recording with my phone because it's better quality camera than my laptop. But I have a 32-inch monitor next to it that you really can't see as it's off screen. But I watch Army of the Dead on there. And I'd say my only disappointing factor with Army of the Dead at the moment with the film is that it wasn't in 2-3-5-1. And anybody who knows me as a filmmaker knows that my favorite aspect ratio is 2-3-5-1 in all of Zack's films, except for, I think, the Snyder cut of Justice League were in 2-3-5-1. So it seemed weird. Oh, thought I was going to sneeze. Excuse me. So, which is weird because all of his other projects were always in 2:3:5:1, if I remember correctly. And it's a great aspect ratio. I even did all of mine in 2:3:5:1. So, which is hard using digital video because most of the cameras are anamorphic and you got to put another lens on them and you got to crop and all this other shit. So, but these are the certain things. Oh, and my other big gripe with people commenting about Army of the Dead, and I'm not trying to completely defend the movie. It has its flaws, but it's a popcorn flick, much like Batman v Superman, Justice League, any of the Marvel movies. I mean, these are not freaking Oscar-worthy films. I mean, they're not, turning in Oscar-worthy performances. That's, they do enough to get by. The studios aren't marketing them for Oscars on acting or writing. They're doing visual effects. That's what they're trying to get the Oscars for. Because you could still brag, oh, the Oscar-nominated DC Comics film, Man of Steel, and I don't even remember if that won for anything, but I'm just kind of, giving you an idea here. So, but one of my other big gripes with Army of the Dead, other than the technical aspect ratio, is, or I should say the comments about it, are people that blame Kate. Now, I don't like Kate. I hated her character from the get-go. She was just fucking annoying, and I don't like annoying people. I just don't. I don't like them. I fucking hate people in general, but that's just me. But the whole point of the matter is Kate is getting a lot of blame for getting everybody killed, and it really wasn't Kate's fault, because when she said she was going in and staying with her dad, she had to agree to stay with her dad. She did up until the point she slipped away once they opened the vault, which was kind of smart of her. She knew they'd be distracted by the millions of dollars. But she had no responsibility in getting anybody killed. Martin got everybody killed. The guy that worked for Tanaka. And, if it wasn't for, he set up Chambers, which, by the way, was the most badass scene. There's a chick that raised her hands like, I never killed a zombie, and then Martin fucks her and gets her into a situation, and you can tell she kind of, she didn't sell it as she never sold a zombie or killed a zombie, because the actress is very beautiful, but her role was too small and you didn't really get much depth to her. But the first zombie she kills, when he sends her down that fucking path, she nearly throws up. She goes, and this is after she knifed it in the head. And then she still was a little queasy on the second and third kills. And then it was after that, she's like, at this point, it was survival mode. And she went out like a fucking badass. When she busted through that window into the hallway, I was pissed that nobody went to her rescue, considering how far back the zombies were. And I'm kind of surprised with Zack on that one. I think he could have played it a little better, but that's me. I'm not the director. That's his vision. Like I said, I like the guy personally. I enjoy most of his movies. I just think Army of the Dead gets a really bad rap now that I've watched it the few times I have. But Chambers, yeah, definitely, that was probably the best fucking scene. The sad thing is nothing really lived up to it after that, in the sense, like even Scott's fight with the zombies in the hallway after they twists Maria's neck around 180 fucking degrees and her spine pops out, which was a badass scene in and of itself. But anything after that just didn't really compare to Chambers' sequence. Man, they should have saved that for later in the movie. But Kate didn't really get anybody killed at that point until she took off, and then Scott had to make the decision to go after her. But at this point, Martin had already put things in motion by killing the Queen and getting Zeus started. Because remember, Zeus saw these people entering the city. He was standing on the top of the, miniature, well, not miniature, but the somewhat replica of the Statue of Liberty. And he's looking down at them. So they gave Zeus's army an offering, which was the piece of shit security guard, or cop, or whatever the fuck he was. which was Theo Rossi from Sons of Anarchy. And they gave him, so, he's fucking just left him alone, It's like, okay, I got another person for my army. But when Martin crossed the line, decapitating his queen, all bets were off at that point. And people say, oh, zombies don't have emotions. Well, I tend to disagree with that because George Romero touched on it in Day of the Dead with Bub, and which was one of my other favorite zombies. I'm not saying Zeus is a favorite zombie. Zeus is cool in his own right, but he's not Bub. Here, I've got to collect my thoughts. It's the end of the night for me because it's like almost 10 o'clock. Yes, I turned 50 in 8 days, so I'm kind of at that stage where I'm just like in bed by 10 or 11. But, that's Martin's to blame. Kate is to blame for everything after. So when she's to blame for Maria dying, but still not 100% to blame because it was Martin's actions that set everything into motion. If Martin hadn't decapitated and just took the vial of blood, like he said, and not backstabbed everybody like he did, I don't know if the movie would have turned out the same. Probably would have been boring after that, but people give Kate a bad rap. Kate's responsible for everything kind of after, but at that point it was too late. The zombies were already swarming the Bly Hotel, and there was nothing that could be done at that point. Excuse me. And so you can't blame Kate for running off to go find that mother, but it did put her father, and Guzman, and Lily, the coyote, in a lot of risk because now they had to go find her when everybody probably could have bailed, got up to the roof. But, at the same time, Tig's helicopter wasn't even fixed yet. Now, people complain about, they should have just had the heist and just the heist only. I'm like, well, okay, the heist is... I don't know how exciting that would have been because the zombies don't give a fuck about the money. They give a fuck about which became their kingdom. And, then you would have to change the whole storyline. And then other people have said, well, why even have the heist? And I said, okay, well, and my theory is, why have the heist? Well, if you're really just going there to get the head of the zombie. And I'm like, okay, you show up. Now, the U.S. government will say started this with Area 51, which, fuck it, the government did it. Why not? They're responsible for everything else. So, the government starts the zombie apocalypse. Well, a blowjob started the zombie apocalypse, but they created Zeus. Or aliens somehow. Whatever happened, who gives a shit? Right? It's a popcorn film. It doesn't need to have a freaking super intricate plot. But anyways, the government does this thing. It ends up having to contain Vegas because of what happened. They lose a lot of the military, but they like the concept of a zombie army. So you got to find somebody that's going to go into Vegas, but they want to keep this on the down low because even our defense budget is not discussed in public in any congressional hearings. It's held in a secret room. Well, it's not really a secret room, but it's held in a committee where, they say, all right, we're giving the military $700 billion for that year. Think about it. We spend $1.4 trillion every 2 years on our military, which is like way over what the next most powerful country is, but hey, whatever. So the military now, if they're trying to make this army in secret because they suffered a lot of losses in the zombie apocalypse, who the fuck are you going to get to go in there and do that? Now, you said they could have sent their own soldiers, but that's putting up men and women that you can't spare at the moment, because you wiped out a good portion of your armed services. Ooh, excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so boring, I'm making myself yawn, right? But you got to go and get the zombie queen. You're not going to get somebody to do it for free. It's just not going to happen. So you have to find a businessman in Vegas, which there's all these casino owners. You know, Tanaka's fictional, but you've got Steve Wynn and all these other guys, right? Well, you know, they don't want probably nothing to do with that because they have other business entities. What does Bly Tanaka get out of this? Well, he's probably going to get a cut of whatever happens. And he builds his own goddamn zombie army for himself. You know, you don't know the true motives behind it, but the heist is the subterfuge, camouflage of what the real purpose was. Because you see military people at Tanaka's house when Scott calls. And you're kind of like, okay, so people are like, all right, so the heist is no longer really the forefront. And if people didn't catch on to it then people really aren't paying attention. So early on, you're like, okay, why are the military people being there? And then all of a sudden, when it gets to Martin, it makes more sense. But I like later on, I said, the heist is a cover. And then, you know, Vandero's all entire time loop theory, I found that kind of fun, especially with the corpses and stuff. Everybody talks about it. It's a great thing. See, this is what makes Army of the Dead kind of a good film, because it's generated so much conversation. I just had a kitty get up behind me. That's Tabitha. I can't try to show her face. Tabitha! Hi, Tabby. That's my first baby right there. Well, other than my son, but she's my fur baby. I forgot where the fuck I was going with this. See, I said, look at the kitty. It's like, squirrel! So, the time loop theory that Vandero came up with was actually a really good talking point, you know, because then it made even the theory of when they found the map earlier, the blueprints for the safe. It's like, and it started making sense as it went on. I'm like, okay, if it is a time loop, they're getting further and further each time. And then I watched a video today that said, well, the nuclear blast, because of certain atoms and things like that, actually could be the catalyst to restart the loop. And they get further and further each time. So if it restarted the loop again, maybe this time they'd be more successful and actually get the money, and Maria would survive. You know, there's these little discussion points that Zack, you know, people can criticize his scripts or the stories he comes up with are just, oh, the scripts are horrible, the edit, blah, blah, blah. But there's shit you talk about. You know, like when the Dawn of the Dead remake came out, man, the true Romero fans hated it, but they were talking about it. Doesn't matter, you know, sometimes negative publicity is the best, but people talking about the time loop theory. This is what Army of the Dead's contributed to and why it's remained as popular as it has for almost 2 months. Chambers. Martin getting killed by the zombie tiger, which was completely badass, and I applaud Zack for the cats like to play with their food before they make the final kill type of thing. Because people are like, oh, that went on for a minute and a half and it was completely unnecessary. I said, you've never seen a cat catch a mouse, did you? They will fucking fling that thing around, pounce on it, beat the shit out of it, and then they eat it. And that's exactly what the tiger did. You know, lions are the same. They go watch a National Geographic video. They get something, tear it down, but they'll fucking, you know, beat the snot out of it. Which is why I like cats. You know, I got 2 of them. I got Xander over here. You know, Xander's my tabby cat. I should name him Cletus the love sponge, because he is like a cat that just loves attention. Tabitha's kind of a straight up bitch. You know, she's just like my ex-wife, right, Tabitha? See, that cat's plotting my death. I'm telling you, she's plotting my death. But Zack succeeded here. He really did. And you can hate Army of the Dead all you want, but it's what people are talking about. Almost 2 months, because today's July 8th. So in another 13 days, we're in 2 months. And here I am making a video. Other people are still making videos. And there's still comments and discussions going on Reddit and other, you know, Facebook and Twitter about Army of the Dead. Not trending like it was, but it's still being talked about. And that's the kind of goal to a movie. It's like, and probably one of the other reasons Zack's become kind of a brand, it's just like, when people, I just saw an article on Yahoo News. It was like, ooh, Zack Snyder's doing Rebel Moon, and that was a new Zack Snyder flick, and you're kind of like, you got to click on it because it's Zack Snyder, I mean, I've never been, other than John Carpenter, who doesn't really work anymore, or George Romero. I mean, it's very rare that I clicked on an article because of a director's name. Some directors I followed, some didn't, and the ones that I've met and had personal conversations with or interviewed in my Wet and Wild radio days, depending on their attitude and general consensus, I was like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, this cat's really cool. All right, well, I'm going to follow him, be more interested. So Zack Snyder's kind of become that person. He's made a name for himself. It's just like he could probably start his own studio, Zack Snyder Pictures. I mean, I know he has a Stone Quarry, and it used to be Cruel and Unusual Films, but Zack Snyder Studios, I mean, shit, he's almost like, I think he's actually more popular than Tyler Perry. He just doesn't own his own studio. And considering he's from Wisconsin, it might be a place to build a movie studio. I don't know. But the idea is his movies may not be Oscar-worthy stuff. They're definitely popcorn flicks. They've all been. But he's managed to build a fan base. And, people say, oh, he's got haters too. If the haters are talking about him, that's still a fan base. It's just a fan base of people that don't like you. I mean, there's people that don't like my films because they're low budget, but there's people that I remember I was talked about from after my second zombie film. People were like, oh, he's getting better, but, some people's like, hey, he still sucks, it's just like, he still chooses shitty actors or whatever. Well, you're making a movie on a $6,000 budget. And I didn't think, I don't look at the person's acting all the time. I mean, I knew I was making a zombie film, which is essentially a popcorn flick. I was like, okay, well, can you sell angry? Can you sell scared? Can you sell, not being able to think under pressure? Those are my three key things. That's, it's just like, this wasn't Dawn of the Dead. It didn't require strategical thinking to close off a mall or anything like that. You're getting help. You're trying to hold up somewhere. Or you're trying to get somewhere. I knew from the get-go, this is what it was going to be. That's what it was going to be. Blah 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 blah. Whereas with my gangster film, I knew that was going to be the urban gangster film. I knew that was going to be a little different. So, in essence, here, Zack has made something that's still talked about 2 months later. His career is followed by a lot of people. And there's an entire community on social media, YouTube, Twitter, that, Zack Snyder's name comes up. It's like, bam. And I think it's because when you see him in interviews and things like that, he just seems like a personal guy. And having met him in person and interviewed him, not once but twice, I was like, okay, wow, this guy's cool as fuck. It's like I had the utmost respect for him. And George Romero is the other one. I got a chance to be a zombie in a George Romero movie. I had a chance to be a zombie in the Dawn of the Dead remake, which is bad timing. But I got to be a zombie in Land of the Dead, so I got to be a zombie in The Master, the creator of the modern zombie film, the godfather of the modern zombie genre. I got to be a zombie in a George Romero film. How many fucking people can say that? Not a lot. I mean, yeah, the extras and stuff, but it's not like, there's a million people around the world that can say blah, blah, blah. So if I would have been given the opportunity or reached out or something to say, hey, I want to be a zombie in Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, could I have gotten it? Maybe. Would I have done it? Fuck yes. Because like I said, I like the guy. And I have respect for his work. But like I said, on my first viewing, wasn't a big fan of Army of the Dead. But it had enough there to make me come back and take another look. And the same thing happened to me with the Dawn of the Dead remake. Like I said, I wasn't too thrilled with it. Then on the second viewing on world premiere night, I was like, okay, And then Universal Studios sent me a screener to finally write a full review, because they asked me to write a review after the world premiere, but I had to hold it until the premiere date. And I said, I've only seen it twice, and I said, I need to look at it one more time so I can really delve into what I wanted to talk about. And this was from my website at the time. And so they sent me a VHS screener, because that's what they sent out back in the day. They didn't do DVD screeners back then. They sent me a VHS. I sat and watched it, and then I wrote my review. And I think I gave it a B-, if I remember correctly, or a B, somewhere in there. And I remember that my biggest selection of words I used was, "This is a zombie popcorn flick." This is not the Dawn of the Dead I grew up with. This is definitely on a completely different scale. And that's fine, but I know people argue this, that, and the other thing. But I followed Army of the Dead when news broke. I'm a zombie fan. Zombie fan plus, again, my comments about Snyder. I'm like, all right, I want to see where this goes. I didn't really get a concept of breaking into Vegas to do a heist. And I didn't even think $200 million was worth it, but I don't know. The original concept back then wasn't $200 million. I think they had to up it because of inflation over 15 years. But, he came up with the concept of this, while making Dawn of the Dead. And it just, it took forever. Warner Brothers was going to do it, and then they pulled out of it. And it just was it was a pain in the fucking ass. And I'm glad Netflix got it, because Netflix handed him, the rumor is $90 million, and said, here, go start a zombie franchise. And, Zack's his budgets were bigger with the DC stuff, but the biggest budget he worked up until the DC stuff was $60 million, I believe. No, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Watchmen was over $150 million, but it was the comic book stuff. So the other stuff that was, I think 300 was the largest budget he had worked with at the time. And even that was a comic book, so, it is what it is. But he did this zombie film, $90 million, right? The last time a zombie movie cost that fucking kind of money was World War Z. And that went way over budget because of reshoots. That's a freaking chunk of change. Now, would I have done things differently if I was the director? Who the fuck wouldn't? There's things I would have done completely different. But it's not my movie. It's not my script. So my big thing is this. If you were on the fence about Army of the Dead, you need to revisit it. But you also need, if you love Easter eggs, you got to look and find them, because they are hidden very well. And Zack is great at that. He is actually one of the best filmmakers for Easter eggs that I have seen in a long, long time. And some of them are good, but his Easter eggs are some of the best. I mean, even in his DC films, he hints to his other films. So, take it for what it's worth. Anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to say, even though I got off tandem, like kitties and squirrels and all kinds of shit. So, but that was just my thing, Some comments I had about videos I've seen, comments I've read, just my opinion on something, and I really think that you should give Army of the Dead another chance if you were on the fence about it. And I think you're going to find it more interesting. I could be wrong. You could probably look at it again and say, no, fuck this, I'm out. But why not? And then I'm going to do another video about another movie I just watched tonight called Unhinged with Russell Crowe, because there seems to be backlash over that. And I have my own opinions. Oh, yeah, man, there's a guy with an opinion on YouTube. Isn't that a shocker? Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Anyways, guys, thanks for bearing with me for these last almost 40 minutes, and I appreciate it. And if you haven't got a chance, and you actually want to check out my zombie film, out of the two of them, I'd start with Deadlands 2 Trapped. It really has nothing to do with the first one. It's just that the name of the first one kind of caught on in the low-budget indie community, so my distributor insisted I call that movie Deadlands 2. Which, I don't have a problem with it. Whatever, it stuck with me. But if you get a chance, it's on YouTube, completely free to view. All right, well, thanks for spending the night with me. Yep, bye.